Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Move Minneapolis. I need to share my screen. You are in the "Hey, where did my bus go?" webinar. If that is where you're intended to be, you are in the right place. This webinar is presented by Move Minneapolis, and it's going to be about bus driver shortages, a tight labor market, and the road ahead. Thanks again for being here. Welcome. My name is Catherine Windick. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an outreach and events specialist with Move Minneapolis. I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'm also supported by Carl Hedlund, who is with Move staff helping me out as well. Thanks so much for joining us. The webinar today is being recorded, and you'll get emailed a link to the recording after the webinar wraps up sometime either later today or tomorrow in the coming future. If you'd like, you can go ahead and share your organization and location in the chat. And there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen that we'd like you to share your questions throughout the presentation, if you have any. If you specifically want to ask a person like Brian or Alec or Reinaldo a question directed right to them, please put that in your question, include their name so that we know who you are talking to. So I'd like to give you a brief introduction to Move Minneapolis, the transportation management organization for downtown Minneapolis. Our mission is to improve air quality and reduce congestion. We focus on commuting, and on the screen here you can see a photo from last year of the part of the Move team who either rode their own bikes or a nice ride bike to a meeting. And we like to walk the talk as it is and help people do what we love to do as well. And we consult with downtown Minneapolis employers. That's a big part of our mission, and why we're here is to work through employers to help their employees and others get to downtown sustainably. So more about what we do. We provide employer services, which can include anything from commuter fares, transportation benefits consultation, commuter surveys, Metro Pass enrollment, policy and benefits review, and carpool registration. We provide commuter resources and consultations. So on the screen here, there's an image of me and my colleague Carl at a relocation fair, working with an individual employee on what is her best way to get to work. This company was newly relocated downtown, and their employees were used to free and ample parking in the suburbs. So we worked one-on-one with people to figure out how they were going to get to work. And we also provide sustainable transportation promotion through various webinars like this and in our newsletters and social media. We put on several events throughout the year, including Car Free MSP in September, our annual transportation summit in the fall, and we run programming such as our ongoing community ambassador program. If you'd like to learn more about how Move Minneapolis can help with you or your organization with transportation that's sustainable, feel free to email me anytime. I'm at catherine@moveminneapolis.org. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers, which we have images of on the screen. Big thank you to each of them for giving of their time today. I'll start with Reinaldo Germano, who is project manager and senior transportation planner at Foursquare ITP. He is currently working on the study that he's going to talk about with you today. And his key projects include conducting a public transportation inventory and assessment in the Appalachian region and developing a series of guidebooks on transit tech at small transit agencies. Before joining Foursquare ITP, Reinaldo conducted studies and on-the-ground support for cities throughout Brazil, looking to improve bus rapid transit operation and provide multimodal transportation options. Brian Funk began his career in transit operating a city bus in Ames, Iowa, while attending Iowa State University. Brian joined Metro Transit in 2002 as a supervisor in the Transit Control Center and has held positions of garage manager, director of light rail operations, deputy chief operating officer bus, and has served as chief operating officer since 2021. In his current role, Brian has taken a lead on coordinating agency-wide recruitment and workforce development efforts. And Alec Johnson joined Metro Transit as a bus operator in 2006. For the past 4 years, he has coordinated the Bus Operator Apprenticeship Program, which is a partnership between Metro Transit and the ATU Local 1005, which represents operator and other frontline staff at the agency. Alec occasionally returns to Nicollet Garage to pick up shifts as a bus operator. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Reinaldo. So please help me welcome Reinaldo.
Thank you, Catherine. Gives me 1 second here to share my screen. I hope you can see it. Well, great. Good afternoon. I am Reinaldo Germano. I'm a senior transportation planner at Foursquare ITP, as Catherine mentioned. Foursquare ITP, we are a women-owned small business headquartered in Washington, D.C. As you know from my intro, I worked in Brazil because I'm Brazilian and I'm currently in Brazil. So I apologize in advance if I say something that someone didn't understand. Hopefully the captioning is going to work well, and I'll try to speak slowly. But today the idea is to talk about this report that we're working on with APTA, the American Public Transportation Association. So I organized the webinar today into 5 sections. First, I'm going to talk about what is this report. So I'll just briefly present it and talk about our approach. Then I'll present some of the findings. We'll start to answer those questions that we have on the screen in terms of how severe the shortage is, what are the root causes, and what agencies have to say about the shortage. Then I'll move on to very briefly talk about our next steps, and we'll continue the presentation with Metro Transit. So what is the report? So the report is an interim deliverable of the transit workforce shortage study that we're conducting. The report is titled Transit Workforce Shortage, Root Causes, Potential Solutions, and the Road Ahead. Today, however, I'll focus on the findings related to root causes nationwide, while Metro Transit will dive more into solutions and the road ahead. The overall study aims to better understand the causes of the transit industry workforce shortage and provide best practices for recruiting, hiring, and retaining transit operations workers. And by that, I mean bus and rail operators, mechanics, and mid-level supervisors, such as street supervisors, dispatchers, for example. The study is organized into 2 phases. The first phase, the phase 1, included a research on the root causes of the workforce shortage and a survey of close to 200 agencies across North America. So this represents 200 of the roughly 300 APTA members. So it's very representative in terms of APTA membership. We're now working on phase 2. So phase 2 includes a series of in-depth interviews with some agencies and another survey, this time with frontline workers, to hear what they have to say about the shortage and compare that with what the agencies have told us. So jumping to the subject, how severe is the shortage? In short, the shortage is severe and widespread, with the highest level of vacant positions among bus operators and mechanics, and larger agencies reporting most severe shortages. The graph on the screen gives us a good opportunity to help us dive a little bit more into detail. I'm going to read all the percentages so that we all can know what's going on the screen. But when we look at all the 200 agencies that we talked about, and we asked them how severe the shortage was, 35% of them reported a shortage that was substantially affecting their capacity to operate and provide transit service. 48%, almost half of the surveyed agencies, reported a shortage that was somewhat affecting their capacity to operate and provide service. And 12% reported that they are experiencing a shortage, but not to the extent of impacting service provision. Oh, I'm sorry. That means that 96% of the agencies that we surveyed are experiencing a workforce shortage. When we look at a specific group of the 50 agencies with most ridership in the country, the shortage is even more pronounced, with 41% of them having their capacity to operate and provide service substantially affected by the shortage. And although this shortage is most acute at agencies serving large urbanized areas and agencies with greater ridership, most agencies across the country report the shortage, and that is forcing them to reduce service. This is regardless of size of ridership, service area population, size of fleet. And this is probably why the title of this webinar is "Where is my bus?" right? So this is like the landscape of the shortage overall in the country. And I did hint a little bit and talk a little bit about the positions. So when we talk about the specific operating positions, the highest level of vacant positions are among operators and mechanics. And just to give you a little background in terms of numbers, from the survey, 18% of the bus operator positions are open in agencies across the country, and that number is 13% for mechanics. So this is pretty significant. Jumping to the shortage, the causes of the shortage. In the report, we discussed 6 main causes. The first is an aging workforce. The transit workforce is aging faster than those in other essential industries. And this industry also faces a retirement cliff, which COVID-19 may have accelerated. In 2019, 40% of the transit workforce was 55 years or older. In comparison, when we look at the broader transportation workforce, that percentage is at 24%. So 40% within the transit agency, 24% at the transportation workforce in general. When we look at the second cause that we discussed is related to the first, that is the difficulty that agencies have in attracting younger workers. There are several factors likely contributing to this failure of this industry in maintaining a good pipeline of younger workers. But in general, younger workers tend to value a dynamic workforce environment, and also work-life balance just as much as competitive compensation. So that it plays into more people choosing to join a different agency, different industry because of all the issues that we'll discuss a little bit more in the future later today in terms of scheduling, work schedules in the transit industry. The third cause here is, again, related to the second, that is access to childcare or like caregiving in general. And this is an ongoing concern among workers, particularly among frontline workers, and it has been exacerbated during the pandemic. And it relates to those schedules and the work-life balance that we were talking about. Then we have broader reasons, like causes that are more related to the economy overall, that is a strong labor market. Job churn has accelerated in the last few years, with workers reporting they're leaving jobs over pay, opportunities of advancement, and low morale. So those are things that trades and agencies are already looking at and trying to improve. Then we have recruiting capacity. The transit agency also struggles to recruit for administrative positions. So the support that they need to recruit more people or hire more people, that is another thing that a lot of agencies have already started to work on, but we still see that as an important cause of the shortage. And lastly, a complex regulatory framework. So different bodies at different levels of the government and law regulate how agencies operate, hire, train, and otherwise interact with operations staffs. So this is from CDL requirements, safety requirements, background checks, drug testing. There's a big number of rules impacting the capacity and also the speed of agencies that they have to hire people. Talking about what agencies have to say about the shortage. So here I started to dive more into the survey results. And I have a series of graphs in the next 2-3 slides where we talk about specific topics. So this first one is basically, why are people quitting? So agencies reported that compensation and work schedules are the leading reasons for workers to quit. So concerns over contracting COVID-19 was also ranked important, like high, it was third. Note that we're talking about, we had this question in the survey as before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, and I'm mixing the results of the two here. So since COVID-19 started, it became really an important reason why workers were leaving. But before and after the pandemic, compensation and schedule have been very clearly the two biggest reasons among this reported in the survey. And in the graph, we have a graph in the screen that shows if each one of those reasons, compensation, schedule, assault and harassment, or other reasons for quitting, how important they were before the pandemic and since the pandemic. And you can see that compensation and schedule, they were important before the pandemic, and they became even more important after the pandemic. 57% of the agencies report compensation being a more significant reason for workers to quit after the pandemic. The same for schedule, with over half of the agencies reporting an increase in that being a reason. It was a little surprising for us that assault and harassment, that the change wasn't significant between before and after COVID, but it was significant. It has been significant. It's just not up there in the top two. Another thing is that the same thing for others. So this is just another thing in terms of, here we're comparing where we have a number of other reasons, but also some reasons, unknown reasons. So not everyone knows, not every agency has a good tracking in terms of exit interviews to know why people are leaving and where they're going to. So talking about where they're going to, right? So the destination of quitting workers. We know that this is an older cohort of workers. So retirement is clearly significant. So 27% of the people of workers operating workers are leaving because they're retiring. But then when we look at how many workers are going to non-transportation positions, there are 27%, so the same percentage, and workers leaving to the transportation leaving to positions within the transportation industry, but not transit. That is also significant, 18%. So you can see that a significant number of people are leaving the industry overall. They're really going to a different industry, or 10% are even leaving the workforce. I want to note one thing here also, that if you add up those percentages, they're not going to end up to 100. So that's why I'm not summing things and saying, because we're looking here is at the average for each one of the responses. So we're averaging how many agencies listed retirement and non-transportation positions. So that's why we can't really sum things, but we can see how they compare to each other. So we can see how retirement is important, how living to a non-transportation work is also important, and living to transportation but not in the transit industry is also important, but not as important as these other two reasons I mentioned. Again, here, not other and unknown is also significant, showing that almost a quarter of the the workers that leave agencies don't really know where they're going to. And when we talk about the proportion, when we talk about when they're leaving, right? So that we talked about the fact that attracting younger workers is difficult, and knowing when they're leaving the industry and where in their career they're leaving the industry also gives us a good indication in terms of how hard it is for specific cohorts, or how hard it is for agencies to really maintain this pipeline of workers. So 24% of the workers, 24% of workers leave an agency at retirement. So retirement is, as we said before, important. Although retirement makes up a substantial share of work departures, nearly twice as many happen during the first 2 years. So when we look at the bottom of the graph, we see that 16% of the workers leave during training, 20% of them leave during probationary period, and 23% leave them within the 2 years of employment. So you can see that again, I said it can't really sum, but probably at least half of the workforce has left the industry within the 2 years. So this is significant. This is a very big challenge for agencies to maintain a workforce, to be able to kind of make up for this shortage and also fight this retirement cliff that we're seeing ahead. So again, almost like between a fifth and a quarter of people departing agencies, they depart in this period between after 2 years of employment and before retirement. In addition to those numbers, a few other numbers that we got in the survey I think are interesting to know. This is what we see now, and that has been increasing. So early career departures seem to be increasing, with 66% of the agencies saying that they've seen an increase in departure during training. 62% of the agencies seen an increase during the probationary period, and 55% seeing a rise during those 2 first years. So you see, it's when a lot of people leave, and agencies are also seeing more and more people leaving during this period. So summarizing a few of the findings in terms of what agencies have to say. The first is, in the survey, they reported high attrition within hiring and onboarding process, while saying that people leaving agencies very early in their career. Agencies report 35% of employment offers are rejected, and this is nearly twice the average across other industries. At large agencies, 1 of 5 new hires do not show up for the first day of work, again contributing to that shortage. Agencies report that 36% of departures occurred before the end of the probationary period, and agencies need more than 4 complete applications to get 1 worker in the door on the first day of work. So you need 4 to get 1 at the door, and a lot of those are not really continuing beyond 2 years. So this is what we found, that's what we heard from the agencies in this first survey. And what we have ahead of us is we're now as I mentioned in the beginning, we're conducting interviews with transit agencies, and we're also closing our frontline worker survey this year. So we're wrapping up our interviews and closing the survey this year so that we can work on our final report, and we will launch that on APTA's legislative conference in March. So this is my contact if you have any questions, and I pass the floor to Catherine.
Thank you so much, Reinaldo. That was a wonderful presentation. Lots of really interesting information that I know for me has sparked some questions. If it has sparked questions for others in the audience, please do use the Q&A function in the bottom of your screen to put in some questions for Reinaldo. And next, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Funk and Alec Johnson from Metro Transit to talk about what Metro Transit is doing in response to these numbers.
Thank you, Catherine, and I trust that everyone is able to see my presentation. And so again, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Appreciate so many folks coming out with an interest in Metro Transit and what we're working on, how we're addressing the shortages that Reinaldo and his team have so aptly described, and then responding to it in what we think is a positive way so that we're able to restore higher service levels as well as the high quality service that the region deserves. So just to orient everyone towards where Metro Transit is at these days, I'm going to show a chart here and I'll describe this for everyone. I'm showing a chart over time since just before the pandemic started. And one of the things that I like to highlight is we have a line that shows even before the pandemic started, we were facing a shortage of bus operators in our workforce. We were not able to meet all of our service as scheduled. And that's something that is really hard for all of us, is when we put a schedule together and put it out for customers, we expect to be there at every corner, every trip that we promise. And so we had a lot of work going on for years leading up to the start of COVID, but you can see when the pandemic hit, we readjusted service levels, which are two lines that show both of our budget, sort of our planned levels, as well as our target. We then suddenly came into a situation where we had more operators than what was required based on ridership and our planned service. And so we recognized that it wouldn't last forever. So we continued to be working on our efforts behind the scenes. And, you know, as we expected, for all the reasons that Reinaldo had stated, we continued to see retirements and people looking at other industries or other occupations. As we had people retiring from Metro Transit in non-operator jobs, a lot of people who were operators were able to be promoted and moved into more of the administrative or managerial roles. So anyways, fast forward to now, we've started to level out on our hiring, which is great news because that's not been the case for a lot of employers in a lot of industries. We have reduced our service somewhat. We still have about 70% of our service from the pre-COVID levels. We're adapting to our sort of new marketplace right now and looking at all of the travel patterns, and we'll have a whole plan coming out over the next year to re-engage our communities about what are the services that they would like us to reinstate as we're able to better supply more operators. So I guess the bottom line takeaway is that we're doing okay. We're going to continue to look to gradually add back service as we're best able once we're confident that we continue to have stability in our workforce numbers. One of the things when the Foursquare group's initial information came out that we took upon ourselves is to say, there's a group of 8 preliminary recommendations from their study findings. How are we doing here at Metro Transit? And so what I have on this screen is sort of a stoplight exercise here. And next to each of the 8 preliminary recommendations, I've tried to give ourselves a fair assessment score of how are we moving the needle and addressing each of those areas so that we're able to recruit and retain our talented operators. And so I'll just walk through each one really briefly. I can get into more detail in the Q&A session later, but wanted to just give folks some confidence that we're managing this and we have sort of everybody focused on these efforts. And so first and foremost, increasing compensation. This last October, after a series of negotiations with the ATU local, we came to an agreement. All current employees received a nice, well-deserved wage increase. And then our newest operators had a shrinking in their overall wage progression, which meant a really nice, more competitive starting wage at over $26 an hour, plus some additional signing bonuses that we think are better positioned us in the marketplace. So that seems to be paying off. And, you know, we really think that that's a way that we're starting to attract more candidates and really high caliber individuals. The second one is about improving schedules. Reinaldo mentioned that. That's something that we need to do in partnership with our union. And so I've scored us at a yellow, sort of. We're talking about it. We've made some progress. We have some ideas. We just need to come up with concepts that make sense. Of course, one of the challenges is that by nature, we do have offerings where we're operating almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. And so there's going to need to be an element of our employees who are working at all of those times, both in the operator maintenance areas, as well as our supervisors and managers. And so how we can do that and then maybe work into things like more flexible offerings is something we continue to work on. And I think that we're going to be industry leading in that area very soon. Creating a positive environment. That's something that When you're a bus operator, and as was mentioned a million years ago, I drove a bus, not in the Twin Cities, but when I was in college. And what it did give me, though, is an appreciation for really that need to have a supportive environment when you're back at the garages or the bases. That's something that you're working on your own. You're your own boss to a large degree when you're out navigating the buses through the streets, but we want to have a positive workplace when you're back. And so we've taken a lot of steps in this area. Alec is going to highlight a mentoring part of our apprenticeship program that's really top-notch, industry leading. But also we continue to work on our own Great Workplace project, which is setting norms and values across our workforce about how we interact and support each other and create a really positive environment for all of our employees. Number 4, we have continued to be an organization that promotes from within. As Catherine stated when she started out, I've been a beneficiary of that, where I started in a frontline supervisory role here at Metro some 20 years ago, and have been able to do a lot of different things and gain some experience. And now I'm in this current position. And so like myself, the other leaders in the organization have benefited from programs. And so we continue to invest in things like our Leadership Academy to provide a clear pathway for individuals who are in frontline roles to gain supervisory experience and then move up in the organization if that's what they'd like to do. So another green dot for us there. Ensuring worker safety, we're on the right track, and this may be a good Q&A topic, but Metro Transit and the Met Council with our Transit Police Department have had a well-publicized safety and security action plan that was adopted by our council in 2022. We continue to work on that. Our operations teams are working really hard on improving worker safety and trying to inspire confidence that we're going to do everything we can to support individuals if something doesn't go well out in the system. Number 6, about ongoing training. We continue, Alec is going to talk about our extended apprenticeship program with additional training opportunities, but in addition to annual refresher training and ongoing technical training, we also try to make sure that people are provided with things like de-escalation training on a regular basis. And we have a 3-day program in concert with an organization from Philadelphia called Red Kite that's proved to be very effective and provide that opportunity for our operators specifically to be able to get out of the seat into a classroom and be able to process as a team, what's important to them and how they can do their job the best. So, and then of course, increasing hiring effectiveness. It's one thing to get a ton of offers out there, or a ton of applicants, but we need to make sure that A, the volume is there so we can restore service confidently, and B, we're looking for really high caliber, high quality individuals. The customers that we are working with are real people who are counting on us to operate safely and have full control of the bus and the equipment when we're out there. So we're not going to let just anybody do this job. And so one of the things that we've been doing and working towards are more adaptive approaches to streamline our hiring application process, making conditional offers through twice monthly hiring events where people are able to come in, complete an application, an interview, and then get a conditional offer pending a background review and physical. Also CDL preparation, that's been identified in Foursquare's recommendations as an area that is difficult to overcome. So just in fact, this month, after a lot of preparation, we started offering a paid program for people to obtain both their commercial learner's permit with us at the full starting wage. And then they can move right into a classroom to start obtain their CDL, again, as a paid regular employee, and then into our regular operator training. So this is industry leading stuff. It's something that a lot of organizations aren't able to navigate, but we think we're doing a really good job. Easy to use application. There's always room for improvement. So we continue to have a team who's working with new applicants and trying to collect feedback on making that simpler. And then finally, before I turn it over to Alec, I'll just address increase the recruiting effectiveness. So once we have an individual who has signed up and they appear to be a good fit to be our next bus operator candidate, we want to make sure that they have the tools within to support them. And so they know that by leaving another employer, that when they come to Metro Transit, they're going to get the support they need. And I'll make a pitch real quickly. We have a bus operator hiring event, and this is an event that's pretty new or unique to us. it's a drive the bus event. And so for individuals who aren't so sure about driving something the size of their apartment around the cities, they're able to come over to our new North Loop garage, which is right on 7th Street up from Target Field. It's the one with the cool kind of neon lights. This Saturday from 9 to noon, we'll be again taking applications, interviewing, making conditional offers, and letting folks get behind the wheel with one of our instructors to drive the bus inside our brand new garage. We're really excited and hope to get a great turnout. And so with that, I'll be happy to turn it over to Alec.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Alec Johnson. I'm the coordinator of our bus operator apprenticeship program. And I truly believe I have one of the coolest jobs at Metro Transit, just because my main responsibility is to help support new operators through the first couple of years on the job. As Reinaldo mentioned, that's often the time where people, it can kind of make or break people, and we lose a lot of good people. And I think the transit industry is finally coming around to recognizing that we need to do a little more through those first couple of years when it's the most challenging. And so I'm excited to be a part of this joint labor management initiative to do just that. Our apprenticeship for bus operators is recognized by and registered with the Department of Labor, which was actually, we were the second in the country to create such a program. It's actually a certification program where by the end of it, you receive journey worker status, just much like an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter goes through an apprenticeship in the building trades. That concept is being expanded. Department of Labor is putting a lot of efforts into expanding that into other fields and trades, and transportation there's a lot of potential to expand in transportation. So we're very excited to be the second in the country to do that, and there's more now starting on our heels to try to make that industry-wide standard, which really sort of helps elevate the status, and I think in general helps with recruitment too. People see it as more of a professional career, whereas sort of by default, a lot of times the job of bus operator would be just thrown in the mix with other, quote unquote, low skill jobs, which those of us who do this job would argue that is not fair. It's not a low skill job. It's an extremely skilled profession, both in the technical side of operating the bus and the conditions you operate in, and all the people, the precious cargo you have on board, but also the the people skills that are involved. You really have to have top-notch skills of dealing with the public and all sort of layers of society. It's been a union management collaboration, officially launched in 2018, though it was in the works for a couple of years leading up to that. And I've been involved since the beginning. And it's really great to see union and management working together on something like this. There's a time and place for negotiation and battling it out over a contract, but we can all agree that more needs to be done, better training can be provided. And we think relying, especially enabling the frontline workers to play a more active role in helping out their union brothers and sisters is really an important strategy. And I think it's very effective. And it was really great to see Metro Transit sort of open the door to that idea, and the union and management have worked well together in creating this program. And really what it does is it, tries to change the sort of traditional method for onboarding new employees in the transit industry. I mean, it's not unique to Metro Transit, but historically, bus operator training was just scrunched into a 6, 7, 8 weeks or whatever, 5, 6 weeks at the beginning of one's career, and then you were just kind of thrown to the wolves, so to speak, and said good luck. We'll do a little more training with you here and there if you need to know some routes, but it really didn't provide like a long-term approach. And in the past, there was a luxury of a lot of people who wanted the job. And as that started to dwindle, we realized we got to do more to really keep the people here and do more to support. So this 2-year sort of concept of from the time you walk in to the time you receive your certification as a journey worker, a certified transit bus operator, really helps people come into the job in a mindset that they're going to continue their learning and development over that time. So you don't put too much pressure on yourself to go out on day one and be as experienced and knowledgeable as long-term employees. It's a more holistic training program. And for those who maybe can't see on the screen, I have a graphic that shows a pie chart of 3 things. Classroom and hands-on training being one piece of a pie in terms of like mastering a trade sort of on your way to certification. And that's something that Metro Transit's always done really well is, technical training, showing people how to, operate the vehicle and all the technical things that go with fare boxes and fare collection and knowing the system and that kind of stuff. But what's really cool about apprenticeship is it recognizes that you also need to gain a certain amount of field experience. So that's another piece of that pie on your way towards mastery, gaining just hours, logging hours, performing the tasks of the job. And then the third piece being peer-to-peer mentoring. And that's where registered apprenticeship always relies on learning from experienced workers, that sort of knowledge transfer of one generation of workers to the next. It's a time-tested model that really dates back to the dawn of civilization. The people learn from people. They learn from people who've been doing it for a long time. No matter how many PowerPoints you make and YouTube videos you make, you really can't learn as well as you can by shadowing and understanding and sharing tips and tricks and things learned along the way. So our sort of more holistic approach to training, I've listed here 4 things: 4 technical skills workshops we do on a continuing basis after initial training. So everything listed there is sort of in addition to what we historically have done. And then we've added 4 soft skills workshops that focus around people skills. We bring in people that talk about dealing with folks who struggle with mental health issues. We have, as Brian mentioned, a resilience training that's actually a 3-day course that's sort of nationally renowned course on resilience for bus operators. And then we also have workshops on advancing knowledge around the transit system and becoming more of a knowledgeable, well-informed, well-rounded, and confident bus operator out there. But lastly, we have the peer-to-peer mentorship program, which I really think it's kind of the secret sauce to all of this, is relying on the frontline workers to reach out and continue to check in on folks. So my next slide here will talk just a few points here about specifically that mentorship program, because that's really what we were most excited about when we launched this registered apprenticeship. It's a peer-to-peer program. It's very much given some independence to the operators to sort of, we've selected some operators through a vetting process to be peer mentors, people they see out on the street every day. The new drivers see them day to day driving the same routes that they do. But the mentors have taken upon themselves to continue to check in on the less technical aspects of the job. Just whether it's about picking the right schedules and routes and acclimating oneself to this job, because it really is sort of a culture, and we have a good brotherhood, sisterhood through the union, but it takes a while to really sort of get acclimated to the lifestyle of a bus operator. It really can be a challenge. So we know people are successful out there. They want to share that passion for the job. They want to share that knowledge that they have. But it can be really hard because the job's very isolating, because you're hardly ever next to a coworker. And so we're trying to facilitate more of that. Our mentorship includes 5 ride-alongs. Mentors go out and ride with their apprentice or mentee to really just check in on them and just sort of, say, hey, you're doing great. Maybe I would have done it a little differently. Here's one trick I learned over the years to help make sure that problem doesn't happen again. We also have meetings where we bring people back to the training center. This is in addition to our training workshops. So the mentor-mentee meetings are sort of a closed-door driver forum, if you will, where we have a set agenda of points to talk about, but really people can share, and it's a mixed room of experienced mentors with our new folks to really get everything out there and see that everybody's got different ideas, different style of dealing with things. There's no one perfect way to deal with it. So, and then lastly, our mentors regularly check in with their mentees, just reaching out. Do you have any questions? Or they'll say, hey, how's that issue you were having last week? Did that ever get resolved? Or are you still having that problem on that route or with that particular, passenger who keeps riding your bus or something like that? And that really means a lot, because it's so easy to get sort of lost in the shuffle when you're hiring hundreds and hundreds of people a year, and just how much we have to do to get ourselves back to fully staffed. It's so easy. We're hiring, kind of roughly 9-10 people a week here, just churning them out one after the other each class. And it's on us in the apprenticeship and mentorship program to sort of keep tabs on those new folks and make sure that they're not getting lost out there, like both literally and figuratively. But yeah, the mentorship really builds on the concept of camaraderie and solidarity that is inherent in unionism and trade unions, and it really helps build a more resilient employee. And we know that it's helping a lot of people keep this job and sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel and say, these people really, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to get to. I want to get to the level that my mentor is at. And the really cool thing is we've been doing this program 4.5 years. We now have people who were mentees in the program who've been here 3-4 years now stepping into the role of mentors. So that's a really good sign that the program works, and that it means a lot to people. So we like to celebrate it too. There's some pictures from our graduation. We had a big graduation. We had just started graduating folks from our program when COVID hit, but this was right around the start of 2020 when we had this graduation ceremony. And we've continued to celebrate, but in much smaller scale since then. We hope to get back to some bigger events with real graduations, receiving the certificates and recognizing these operators for really mastering what is not an easy job, and for really being pillars of their community and extremely skilled bus operators out there, and proud members of Metro Transit and ATU Local 1005. With that, I'll turn it back over to Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you, Alec. And I realized I should have asked you if it was 1005 or 1005. I thought that was probably wrong when I was saying it, but thank you for your presentation, Alec, and Brian and Reinaldo. Thank you so much to all three of you. I'll ask if the three of you can come back on camera so we can jump into some Q&A. I'll start out here with, I believe, Brian, you mentioned a survey that was going to be coming out as far as what stops people want to see reinstated or things like that, or routes. So someone asked, how can we receive that survey, as I would be interested in plans to expand express routes to northeast suburbs? Yep.
So great question. What we are calling this program, this is a sort of a holistic view of combining traditional and a stepped up effort for outreach, and then evaluation and reporting out, is Network Now. In the meantime, if you have a favorite route that you'd like to see us either add service to or consider restoring, we'll take that feedback through our regular customer relations channels. And so there's both that near-term opportunity to tell us exactly what you're looking for, and then also the Network Now project that will be ongoing with the report out, hopefully sort of late 23 or early 24 on what our 5-year future looks like.
Wonderful, thank you. I think this will probably also be to Brian, and you might not be able to answer all of this, but what are the impacts of these staffing issues on Metro Mobility or services for people with disabilities? I know that you don't run Metro Mobility, but if whatever you could speak to for that question.
Yep. So great question. Right now, Metro Mobility has some similar challenges to Metro Transit. However, a number of their positions do not have the same barrier for a commercial driver's license. And so it's an opportunity, however, for us to look at how we can work together, because we know that we need to work as a region for a holistic network to be able to provide that. And I will say that even though our traditional fixed route ridership has been increasing, but we're still quite a bit lower than before the pandemic due to commuting changes. Metro Mobility is continuing to see a big increase, and so the demand is going to be there, and they're continuing to work on additional plans for their own recruiting efforts as well.
Great, thank you. So Foursquare identified access to childcare as a root cause of the shortage. And I think this goes probably to Brian again. I don't know if Alec, you have anything to note on this as well, but is there anything Metro Transit is doing specifically to address the access to childcare issue?
Well, I can say that it's been something that has really been challenging us for quite a while. The schedules, as I talked about, are not all that forgiving for traditional childcare centers. And so while we've made inroads to try to reach out and see what is available, the fact is that we need to do more. And so that's one of our big takeaways. It's in my work plan within operations to partner with our human resources department on what are the opportunities that can be available for all of our employees, but namely the frontline employees who have a little bit less say in their schedule or flexibility. So, and Alec, I'm not sure if there's anything that gets talked about through apprenticeship or mentorship on strategies.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been particularly challenging ever since COVID too, with everything just, hours of operation everywhere just shrink, so that includes childcare, and they're struggling with staffing as well, childcare. So it's been particularly difficult, although one promising sign is, I think, as Brian mentioned, some of the scheduling issues that have existed in the past for bus operators being sometimes split into 2 shifts for the day, like maybe 4 hours and then a break, and then 4 hours, or 2 hours and then a break, and then 6 hours. There's less of that lately, just because of the change in the ridership patterns and the way routes are designed. So we do have more like just straight through work shifts that make it a little easier for folks to find daycare options, but it's always been hard. The unions also looked, even in the past, there's been talks about collaborating with other unions, like maybe like nurses unions and others that work sort of 24/7, to maybe look into some sort of collaborative effort on some daycare centers and things like that. But I know that Metro Transit's tried and unions tried, and I always remain faithful that solutions will be found, but change can sometimes come a little slow. But I think people are gonna, start trying even more so now, just because we need to really do more to give people tools for success, and that includes child.
Thank you. Question about North Star for probably Brian. Is reduction of services with North Star related to the workforce shortages as well? And are there any plans on changing scheduling for North Star?
So North Star is a little bit of a different challenge. Certainly we'd like to have additional staff. The way North Star operates for us is Burlington Northern owns the railroad, and they actually staff the crews who operate the trains for us. And so Burlington Northern has some challenges, but they're providing what we're asking for our scheduled service. Really, the last couple of years has been both. We've had really low demand, but we also know that part of that is because we don't offer as many trips as we did in the past, or we haven't updated our trips for new travel patterns. However, we're in a little bit of an issue right now with funding for North Star. We have funding partners who offset a big share of the operating expenses, and there's some internal and debates going on. Some of them public, some not, that are kind of causing us to, we don't have enough money to add the service right now, and we don't have the assurances that our bills will be paid. So it's really stinks that customers are kind of caught in the middle, but we're trying to work through it so that we can make a decision moving forward.
Thank you. I think, so this one is addressed to Metro Transit, but I think Reinaldo, I'm curious if you have any insight as well. I know you didn't include information on this in your section, but I wonder if this might be something that you have in your next phase of the survey, where you're actually surveying operators themselves. So the question is, what are some of the other driver frustrations in which Metro Transit or other operators will need help from other partners in addressing? For example, has Metro Transit gotten feedback from drivers about frustration about winter street clearance? Or are drivers getting frustrated with what seems to be a general decline in public driving habits? So as far as just being on the road and driving with other drivers, is that something that you're hearing about, either Reinaldo or Brian?
Yes, I really wish I could say more at this point, but my work has been limited with the agencies. We're working with EBP on this project and a partner, and they've been working with the frontline worker survey that we're closing this week. So I don't have results on that yet. We will have things to talk about that in March, but right now I don't, all I have is very anecdotal, like a story here and there. I don't have anything like systematized. But yeah, we talked about, yeah, I don't want to continue. I think maybe Metro has something to contribute.
Yeah, I can offer a little bit, and if Alec wants to add in, but certainly, like all people who are using the roads, would it be great if everything was instantly plowed full side to side and people didn't park in weird places or take up space in the bus stop, that'd be great. But our operators develop a pretty thick skin for that sort of thing. And while it can be a challenge, most of our routes are on the biggest roadways, the biggest streets, the first ones that get snow plows and sand and salt treatments and whatnot. And so, Alec, unless you disagree, I think for the most part, we understand that it can take a little bit of time from when those things activate, but you get pretty tuned in on driving defensively more than internalizing or letting it stress you out a whole lot. I don't know how you'd survive if you did that.
Yeah, I'll just add real quick too. Like Brian said, luckily transit tends to be on those heavier traffic corridors. It's less of a problem than it is like with school bus that often has to make tight turns on smaller streets. But yeah, it's been a nuisance. But overall, I would just say in general, the trend of things that frustrate operators these days, it's actually not traffic, because ever since COVID, the volume of traffic is like nothing it used to. It's actually quite easy compared to, past. And it's more on the side of like just some of the, the folks on the buses sometimes causing a little more issues than historically what we used to deal with. So that's why we're trying to, revamp our training to give more tools on interpersonal communications, setting yourself up for success, and in terms of like people who might be on drugs or alcohol, or struggling with other things in life. Like, how do we approach those situations defensively, the same way you approach driving situations defensively? But lately, drivers, at least the longer standing drivers, you hear a lot less frustration about the roadways. It's more, there's been more challenges around some of the passenger issues lately, and that a lot of that has to do with just low ridership tends to invite more problems. Actually, when ridership was high, it was actually fewer problems at times. People tend to just kind of get on and off. So that's what we're seeing more lately. But one frustration goes up, another goes down. There's always going to be something in your job, no matter what job you do. You'll never be free of frustration altogether.
I had a minute to think, and I thought about two small things. One is actually three. One is talking about what you were mentioning in terms of how agencies have adapted, also in terms of hiring people, doing things like assessments so that they understand that the profile of the worker is aligned with a profile of a worker that deals with the customer. This is one thing related to the topic we were just talking about in terms of disruption and harassment. But two other things that I remember that we've talked before in other studies, not necessarily in this studies, were access to bathroom. This can be a challenge for some operators in some routes. Another thing that we don't think a lot, but it's the actual workspace, right? When you're a bus driver, your bus is your workspace. So with COVID and all the challenges we've had with supply chain and like limitations in team being able to renew our fleet, some agencies have also struggled with maintaining a good state of repair on their buses. And also that plays into the comfort and the health of the workers who need to be sitting down for a long extended period of times in a vehicle that is not necessarily the best vehicle.
A couple more minutes. I have really good questions, so try to squeeze them in. One question is about targeted recruitment efforts. Someone said that they think the recent Twitter campaigns are very clever, but what is Metro Transit doing beyond social media? Any outreach to targeted populations, thinking of rideshare drivers, also thinking about refugees from Ukraine who may come with skills from their home country? Anything you could add to that discussion, Brian?
Yeah, so one of the things I can talk about is something that predated sort of our recent push, but we're continuing to utilize this, is our best recruiters are our current operators, frankly. They know the job the best, they understand what it takes, they know what the hours are. They're a lot more in touch with what that role is than anyone else can be. And so we have a program called Operators Engaging and Connecting with Communities, where people sign up and they're given some, both the recruitment materials, but then also sort of the talking points. And, we really kind of set them loose and let them go into the community at both organized and promoted events, but then also sort of just, as teams who can go and talk to people at their mosque or their church, at different community events. And we really thank and appreciate the work that goes into that. because that sort of targeted campaign are the things that Twitter and billboards aren't going to be as meaningful. So we're trying to make that as a real concerted effort.
Wonderful, thank you. So we are almost just at time. So I'm going to ask if I can share the rest of the questions with the panelists and maybe get those answers out via the follow-up email, if that sounds good to folks. Wonderful. So then I just have one last little screen to share before we say goodbye. And I just wanted to thank our speakers again for their participation, to our attendees for your attention. And as I mentioned before, following the webinar sometime, given answering these questions that are remaining, you would receive an email with a link to the recording. Also, immediately following this webinar, you'll get a survey that's very brief that would help us immensely if you fill it out. Just a couple questions about what you thought of the webinar today. And stay connected with us. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. We also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for on our website if you are interested. And I thank you all for joining us today and look forward to seeing you again at a future webinar. Thank you so much for your attention, and we will see you next time. And I think I didn't share my last screen, but that's how webinars go sometimes, right? All right, thanks so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care.